You know, this problem that we're facing today is very, very serious, and it's talked about because the Fed, I think they realize that this is different than ever before, and that they just can't do that, and the balance sheet is getting so big. And people, you know, still have a little bit of an opinion that that can't last. So in 2019, the Fed actually started to shrink the balance sheet. And they did that for a few months, and it caused a calamity. And this was before the coronavirus came out. So they were shrinking it, and the economy was collapsing and all this. So that's when they really moved into the QE stuff. But that's been going on up until just recently, especially with the COVID in the last year or so. They have been increasing the amount that they have to monetize. And on a monthly basis, they take $80 billion, create new $80 billion to buy Treasury bills, and then another $40 billion to buy mortgage-backed securities, part of that housing bubble that's, you know, back in action again. So they do that. It's $120 billion a month that they are just pumping in there, and a lot of that ends up into the hands of the very wealthy and the banks. They have excess as reserves, and they can earn a little bit of interest, a lot more than if an individual saves some money and gets a CD. But the announcement was absolutely bizarre because they can't turn it off, and now they've taken that 120 and they've increased it, adding another $300 billion in cash by the end of this year. So they know it's not working, but they know they can't cut back. That's one thing. I don't think anybody believes that balance sheet and this acceleration of monetary inflation is going to be reversed. It is an addiction. It's like an addiction. There's too many side effects and too many symptoms of an economy where you try to cut it off. The bankruptcies would just go crazy. And even though the market, if you said, well, the government's gone, the Fed's gone, Congress is gone, what's the market going to do? There'd be a lot of bankruptcies, there'd be pain and suffering. But if freedom was restored, it would last about a year. And everybody get back on their feet because all the debt would be liquidated. But nobody considers that at all, except theoretically. But they did that in 1921, and it worked out quite well. After a year, they went back to economic growth again. But right now, it's not going to happen. So they're going to continue. They're accelerating already, and people anticipate it. So they have to figure, what's this Fed going to do? Are they even hinting? And every once in a while, I think most people, especially Fed, know they can't cut back. But afterwards, they'll say something. The Fed said, well, if things are looking better in the front here, and within a few more months, we might be able to start cutting back. And then for 20 minutes, the stock market sinks. And then they say, oh, we don't believe them. So it goes back to, believing that the printing presses will run. But one thing that will happen that they have no control of is the purchasing power of the Federal Reserve note after this gets out of control, because that's based on a subjective belief that the value there will last forever because we are the current, the reserve currency of the world, although it's getting smaller. Then they can trust because we are still a wealthy country. We still have a military might. So they believe that this is going to last forever. But statistically and economically, it won't work. It's not going to happen. And that's the reason why one of these panics are going to occur. Instead of the Fed just pumping out tens, if not hundreds of billions. And of course, the expenditures now are into the trillions of dollars, in this last year with coronavirus, $6 trillion they've spent. And you can't really see healthy economic growth. So until people realize the great danger and what has to happen, we're going to have more of it. And then there will be a reckoning. And that is when the thing falls apart and it'll be a survival mode. But the thing that bothers me is people will survive if they have their liberties. But if they don't have it and the tyrants gain greater foothold, and they are in this past year with this coronavirus, and they're working so hard to get this, passport, vaccine passport. Everybody has to have a vaccine passport, and the Fed is able to badger the big companies. If you don't do it, we're going to punish you.
Before we continue, help us by smashing that YouTube like button and subscribe now to this channel. This shows the algorithm that you value the information, and it helps us spread this message. Sharing is caring. Please like and subscribe now. Thank you. And now, let's continue.
It's a very powerful tool they have because they depend on the Fed to keep doing it. But eventually, when the purchasing power of the dollar, which is already going down significantly, when it gets out of control, the ball game's over. And we better know what we're going to do, and I hope we can contribute to what it is like to have a monetary system which is considered a sound monetary system. The founders knew exactly what the runaway inflation was with the continental dollar, because it was not worth a continental. And they said, nothing but gold and silver can be legal tender. They put it into the Constitution. And they knew what was wrong. But that whole principle was eroded, and by the time the Fed was started in 1913, it's been downhill, and it's on a dead-end road of destroying that currency. But I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. We know that if it continues, something like that is going to happen, but it could be 6 months or 6 years. They can be held together. But one thing for sure, until you solve that problem, the standard of living for all Americans will go down, except those few who know how to protect themselves by being participants in the whole charade. We mentioned that people, one reason why they poured the money into the system on Corona was that the economy would turn down and there'll be a weakening of the economy, and they had to stimulate the economy, so they pumped the money into the system. And all of a sudden we had this unusual thing where people were getting more money sent to them from the government, so they didn't have to go to work. So there's a lot of jobs, but nobody will go to work. So that is a decision made by the individual, which nobody predicted that was going to happen. I don't know how often that's happened in history, but I imagine it has. When they try to salvage something and you just pass out the money, why should people go and work for less? And that's what it would take. But in another area, the same thing is happening. Banks right now are literally begging American people to take out loans. They're flooding with money. And the excessive reserves are put back into the Federal Reserve. They hold them, they get paid interest, which is rather bizarre. But the banks would like to loan out the money, and the money is there. Capital should come from savings, an excess of what people made and didn't have to use to live on. And yet now there's so-called capital. It's not really capital. It's just an excessive flow, and the disruption that has come with this economic planning is such that people aren't ready to borrow a lot of money. And if they do, it'll probably be for consumption, but not building railroads or what. Even the building on the highways will be a government function, and it will be distorted by the fact that it'll be the money there will be divvied up by the politicians. But anyway, it's sort of strange. There's a lot of jobs out there going begging, and people are doing well without it because government's sending them a lot of money. And the same way, the banks want to loan money, to people, and there's not enough people that feel confident enough to do it, even if they don't have to pay any interest rates. There's a hesitation because eventually somebody might have to pay back the principal, and that is when the big problems start. But the mess that we have is here. It's going to stay. But the good news is it's not unsolvable. It is solved by some of the very strong hints that the founders gave us. Property rights and contract rights, sound money, and living within our means. The other thing that would have to be done is that we would have to change our trade policy, our overseas trade policies, and not rely on protectionism and not rely on empire. That is not a way to prosperity. The best way for that to happen is for us to set an example by managing to allow people in this country to do what they think is best for themselves and their family. It's doable. We just have to establish those principles and get enough people to agree.
What to do in such a situation? Inform yourself and keep your financial education strong. We from the Compact Group offer our loyal subscribers a free educational portal with first-hand monetary, financial, and economic knowledge. Enter our invite-only Insider Club by clicking the link below. You will get access to first-class information far earlier than the rest. we have prepared a special deal for all our members where you can access a giant pool of Robert Kiyosaki's financial wisdom for just $1. To find out more, simply click the link below and join our Insider Club absolutely free. But there is more you can and should do. Build up several streams of income. More and more people realize that they have to take their future in their own hands, but they don't know how and where to start. We from Compact offer our Insider Club members unique opportunities. Strengthen your financial muscle and get the edge. Click the link below. Become part of our free Insider Club. No financial obligations. But there's one important thing you have to know. You have to become active. So do it now. Become active and see you on the other side.